The Confessions of Saint Augustine, Book 5, Chapter 7. For after it was clear that he was ignorant of those arts in which I thought he excelled, I began to despair of his opening and solving the difficulties which perplexed me, of which indeed, however ignorant, he might have heard the truth of piety, had he not been a Manichee. For their books are fraught with prolix fables of the heaven and stars, sun and moon, and I now no longer thought him able satisfactorily to decide what I much desired, whether on comparison of these things with the calculations I had elsewhere read, the account given in the books of Manichaeus were preferable, or at least as good. Which when I proposed to, he considered and discussed. He, so far modestly, shrank from the burden. For he knew that he knew not these things, and was not ashamed to confess it. For he was not one of those talking persons, many of whom I had endured, who undertook to teach me these things and said nothing. But this man had a heart, though not right towards you, yet neither altogether treacherous to himself. For he was not altogether ignorant of his own ignorance, nor would he rashly be entangled in a dispute whence he could neither retreat or extricate himself fairly. Even for this I liked him the better. For fairer is the modesty of a candid mind than the knowledge of those things which I desired, and such I found him in all the more difficult and subtle questions. My zeal for the writings of Manichaeus being thus blunted, and despairing yet more of their other teachers, seeing that in divers things which perplexed me, he, so renowned among them, had so turned out. I began to engage with him in the study of that literature on which he also was much set, and which, as rhetoric reader, I was at that time teaching young students at Carthage, and to read with him either what himself desired to hear, or such as I judged fit for his genius. But all my efforts whereby I had purpose to advance in that sect upon knowledge of that man came utterly to an end. Not that I detached myself from them altogether, but as one finding nothing better, I had settled to be content meanwhile with what I had in whatever way fallen upon, unless by chance something more eligible should dawn upon me. Thus that Faustus, to so many a snare of death, had now neither willing or witting it, begun to loosen that wherein I was taken. For your hands, O my God, in the secret purpose of your providence, did not forsake my soul, and out of my mother's heart's blood, through her tears night and day poured out, was a sacrifice offered for me unto you, and you did deal with me by wondrous ways. You did it, O my God, for the steps of a man are ordered by the Lord, and he shall dispose his way. Or how shall we obtain salvation but from your hand, remaking what is made? Chapter 8. You did deal with me that I should be persuaded to go to Rome and to teach there rather what I was teaching at Carthage. And how I was persuaded to this I will not neglect to confess to you, because herein also the deepest recesses of your wisdom and your most present mercy to us must be considered and confessed. I did not wish, therefore, to go to Rome, because higher gains and higher dignities were warranted me by my friends, who persuaded me to this, though even these things had at a time an influence over my mind, but my chief and almost only reason was that I heard what young men studied there more peacefully and were kept quiet under a restraint of more regular discipline, so that they did not, at their pleasures, petulantly rush into the school of one whose pupils they were not, nor were even admitted without his permission. Whereas at Carthage there reigns among the scholars a most disgraceful and unruly license. They burst in audaciously, and with gestures almost frantic, disturb all order which anyone has established for the good of his scholars. Divers outrages they commit, with a wonderful stolidity, punishable by law. Did not custom uphold them, that custom evincing them to be the more miserable, in that they now do as lawful what by your eternal law shall never be lawful. And they think they do it unpunished, whereas they are punished with the very blindness whereby they do it and suffer incomparably worse than what they do. The manners then which, when a student, I would not make my own, I was fain as a teacher to endure in others. And so I was well pleased to go where all that knew it assured me that the like was not done. But you, my refuge and my portion in the land of the living, that I might change my earthly dwelling for the salvation of my soul, at Carthage did goad me, that I might thereby be torn from it. And at Rome did proffer me allurements, whereby I might be drawn thither by men in love with the dying life, the one doing frantic, the other promising vain things, and to correct my steps did secretly use their and my own perverseness. For both they who disturbed my quiet were blinded with a disgraceful frenzy, and they who invited me elsewhere savoured of earth. And I, who here detested real misery, was there seeking unreal happiness. But why I went hence and went thither, you knew, O God, yet should it neither to me nor to my mother, who grievously bewailed my journey and followed me as far as the sea. But I deceived her, holding me by force, that either she might keep me back or go with me, and I feigned that I had a friend whom I could not leave till he had a fair wind to sail. And I lied to my mother, and such a mother, and escaped. For this also have you mercifully forgiven me, preserving me, thus full of execrable defilements, from the waters of the sea, for the water of your grace, whereby, when I was cleansed, the streams of my mother's eyes should be dried, with which for me she daily watered the ground under her face.